How do you get to the point where you can take a basic chord progression and then turn it into a piece of music with a flow of beautiful harmony? You hear it all the time, but if you look at transcriptions, then you're probably left wondering, why is that a minor 7 with a 9? Or how come that's a dominant with a flat 13? And if you try to play that, then it doesn't really fit together. Now, instead of solving difficult music theory equations, then you need to work on something else. Let's look at that process. For this, I'm going to use the beginning of All the Things You Are as an example and build it up from some simple voicings that you probably already know. The first thing you want to do is just to get the basic chords and the harmony into your system, into your ears, and you can add a bit of rhythm to it as well. In the end, that's probably more important than the notes anyway. I'm keeping the chords sort of close to each other so it doesn't sound like a huge jump moving from one chord to the next. And these are all pretty basic chords and you probably already know them. So we want to start doing more to them in terms of adding color and also making the voicings fit together and tell a story. You want to start by turning them into rootless voicings. That way they become more flexible and you have more room to change things around, add notes and play melodies. As you'll see, the secret to getting your comping to sound great is not knowing the most difficult exotic voicings. It's about being able to make music with them. And already with these 3-note voicings, that's actually becoming a lot easier. The big difference here is that it's not about thinking vertical chords. It's about tying the whole thing together with melody, making how you play the chords into something that's a musical statement and not just a bunch of notes next to another bunch of notes. Because that's not how music works. So you can practice making simple, stepwise melodies like this and use different voicings to get it to work. And with this example, you can hear other colors in the chords, but the whole thing works because the chords connect with a melody. Practicing playing through the chord progressions and making these simple, stepwise top note melodies is one of the best ways to explore harmony and make it into something practical that you can use because you're already working on it on a song. Now, I'm sure you also recognize these chords as rootless versions of chords that you already play. First, you want to open up how you use the melody, and then we can go over some more advanced approaches to make the way that you play chords a little bit more interesting and surprising. If you start thinking of the way that you comp as a slow chord solo or a chord melody and not worry too much about extensions, then it's easier to get the whole thing to sound good. And you'll anyway start finding those extensions and those sounds, but you can get them into your playing in a much more natural way. For the first F minor 7 chord, it's already reduced to the A flat major triad, the basic one, and then we can just add these options. In fact, you can just try a bunch of stuff out and see what your ear tells you, and then later figure out what it is. And you can do the same for the B flat minor 7. And don't think about the F minor 7 or B flat minor 7 variations as separate chords. You should think of them as stuff you can use when you want to use the basic F minor 7 or B flat minor 7 voicing. So if it says F minor 7, B flat 7, you can play a melody like this. Or maybe even hint at another song like this one. This is about connecting material and making it flexible, not about learning a bunch of chords that you can't put together. With this approach and an extra trick that I'll get to, you can already do something like this. You want to notice that I'm using the techniques that I just covered, and then there are two places where I'm adding some extra chord voicings. On the E flat 7, the first chord is this triad voicing, which is just a very smooth transition coming from this B flat minor 7. And on the A flat major 7, I'm also adding this shell voicing to transition to D flat major 7. So once you start to explore different ways of playing the basic chord, then it's also a good idea to be aware of the chords around it, because it's all about finding practical ways of playing the chords and making melodies. You also want to notice that the melodies are there to sit behind a soloist. So you mostly use stepwise movement and try not to steal the attention from the soloist, unless you want to get fired.
You're fired!
And then you can just bring out your spiciest reharmonizations, and you might be gone before the second set. The next steps are not nearly as important for how well you play the chords. They're more like icing on the cake, where you can add some extra chords to take you to the next chord. In this example, the chords that are added are written out as secondary tritone substitutions. You go from the F minor 7 to B flat minor 7 by adding this B7, and an E7 is helping the transition down to E flat 7. This is a great thing to mess around with, but you do need to watch out that it doesn't start clashing too much with whoever you're playing behind. Another way that you can add passing chords is using chromatic chords, like this. Here you have A minor 7 as an approach to the B flat minor 7, and A major 7 taking you to A flat major 7. On the guitar, then, chromatic passing chords are often easier to work with because you can think about them visually and you don't really have to overthink it with music theory. You can also open up the chords and not only use the melody as a moving layer, and in that way open up for some amazing things, but it does kind of come at a cost. The feel of this type of playing works better if you're a little bit less active rhythmically, and it works better with sustained chords, which makes it less useful for getting the groove across. But it is a great sound, especially for the beginning of a song or with a soloist that leaves a lot more space. The F minor 7 moves the lowest voice down to the A flat on the B flat minor 7, and I'm also introducing an E flat 7 altered that's resolving to a single E flat on the A flat major 7, and then under the sustained E flat there's room to move the chords a bit, and then a leading note. And here I'm just using the same technique by sustaining a note on the D flat major 7 and then adding some movement in the lower voices, and that's also what I'm using on the C major 7. It is incredibly important that you work with jazz chords on a song and get better at putting them together as music. Another way to work on this skill is also to work on making chord melody arrangements for songs. So taking a melody and turning it into a harmonized piece that you can play as a solo guitar piece. If you check out this video, then you can see how this will teach you a lot, not only about harmony, but also about melody, and open up how you think about jazz chords and how you use them in your playing.